So in the brand new Dungeon Master's Guide, we have a section, a chapter entirely about creating your own adventures. We're laughing because I keep on saying this wrong, but let's talk about creating adventures.
Okay.
Yeah, it's one of my favorite things to do.
Yeah, that's awesome.
That's it. That's the video, everybody. It's pretty cool. You should do
I
it.
create adventures. You create adventures. Yeah, you create adventures. You create adventures, Todd. Yeah, we all create adventures. It's one of the key things that a Dungeon Master does is make adventures to entertain their players. But what we tried to do here in this DMG is a couple things. One, really kind of tailor the advice toward adventures that you're creating for yourself. These are not adventures that you're planning to publish. You're not writing them for a different audience.
Yeah.
This is advice to you, the DM, about how you can prepare for your own games. And what does an adventure look like when you're writing it for yourself? It's not some highly polished, edited, print-worthy, book-sized endeavor. No, it's more like a collection of thoughts and notes in a way that's written out to be accessible and intuitive during play. And so when James, who crafted this chapter, sat down, I know he gave thought to how do I tell DMs how to basically give notes to themselves?
Yeah, and really focus on the narrative of what's happening in the adventure. We get into the nitty-gritty mechanics of how to make sure that a combat encounter is not going to wipe out the entire party or be a cakewalk. But the focus is really, here's the situation at the start of the adventure, what is it that gets the characters involved in this, and how is the story going to unfold from there, and build tension through a series of encounters and resolve at the end of the adventure.
Yeah, and it's crystallized as, exactly as James said, a 4-step process. First, you figure out what the premise of the adventure is, what's going on that's going to cause the conflict. And then how do you draw the players in? What is going to compel them to want to go off on this particular adventure? Because there needs to be a motivation. It can't simply be some villain doing something somewhere or some monster stirring up trouble. The players need some hook into the story. And then, okay, I've got the premise. I know what's going to hook the players. What's the actual sequence of encounters? Figure that out. Make sure the encounters are, to James's point, balanced. They're as hard or as easy as you need them to be. And then finally, how am I going to wrap this up? How is the session going to end, or how is the adventure going to end? And it's good to think about that in advance, to sort of in your head go through the what ifs, the possibilities of how the session may play out. Is it going to be a cliffhanger kind of thing? Is there going to be closure? Is this going to be kind of the end of a big kind of plot turn? Or is it just setting up something in the future?
How is it rewarding when you create your own adventure for your players?
For me, it's rewarding as a creative exercise. When I'm actually thinking about the adventure, it's rewarding to think about the possibilities and how can I make the events of the adventure resonate with my players? How can I take something that's key to a character or multiple characters and kind of latch the adventure onto that? And it might be something that the characters have been wrestling with in previous sessions, or it might be some little hook that a character has that I haven't really been able to incorporate into the campaign yet, but I'm really striving to. I love the idea of thinking about, okay, this adventure I'm creating for next week, what's the magic sauce or what's the element in there that the players are gonna go, oh, this was made for our group.
There's an element of purposeful daydreaming that you get to do as a dungeon master when you write your own adventures. You can just sit there, you could be anywhere in the world. You could be on like a park bench and just be thinking, how can I create a really fun hook, or how can I involve this player?
Yeah, and I think about that whenever I go like on walks for the dog. That's what I'm thinking about in my own home campaign is, okay, all the characters in the party are going on a journey. And they each have an arc. You know, when they get to the end of the campaign or the end of the adventure, their characters aren't going to be in the same place that they were when they started. Something will have changed. What are those arcs? What are those opportunities for characters to grow and change and learn new information? That's the fuel that powers my creative engine during the adventure creation process.
It's interesting, a lot of what you're talking about really sort of branches into the campaigns chapter, talking about how you string adventures together, character development over the course of a campaign. It's a very sort of big picture way of thinking about each element of the campaign, where I had been thinking, I love that an adventure is just sort of this this compact nugget of story that is going to blow up in ways that you can't anticipate. I just sort of love creating this situation with some idea of how characters might go about resolving it, but they always surprise me, and that really is
or the dice surprises.
Yes.
Yeah, that's a really good way of thinking of it, because if I'm running a live game or a one-off adventure, it's very much like that. Just create an interesting setup and then sit back and just watch
that is
watch how things
the Dungeon Master pose.
Watch how things fall apart.
Yeah, we've talked about this at length. You know you've done a good job, like when you have like a little bit of what the adventure is about is something that antagonizes or captures the imagination of the players, and they spiral.
Yeah.
Like sometimes they'll write a single sentence. I'm like, I know that I won't have to do anything today.
And I think you've both hit on something, the idea that one of the most fun aspects of adventure creation is what you can't anticipate. It's the surprise. And the DM can be surprised, and the players can be surprised.
Right.
Everybody can be surprised when an adventure goes, kind of off the rails.
I find that I create summaries for myself now that are so hyper-dense, every sentence matters, but there's only a few sentences. And so, yeah, I've got my monsters all laid out in my encounter builder and all that for the anticipation of all of it, but I keep it so brief now based off like how I know things will spiral. And also my players always ask, are we ruining your game? And I'm like, it's not my game, and I love nothing than burning it all to the ground.
Yeah.
If I bring this up a lot, I made a town where a green dragon had taken over, and it just, shambling mounds were walking the streets, and everyone was hidden in the town, but every NPC they met was a jerk. So many times that they're like, can we just leave
this? Let the town get consumed. It's like,
absolutely, that's my fault. All these people are terrible, and they did. That day, they went and started a pirate fleet. They stole a ship from
I'm so glad you say that, Todd, because that happens fairly often where, due to some miscalculation somehow, you've sort of pushed the characters off in a new direction. And we have feedback in this book about that. It's like, well, if you don't get to the adventure you have planned, you can save it.
Yeah.
Because you'll always be able to figure out a way to reuse that material in some other way. And then when you don't create anything worth saving, the characters will go and find something else to do.
Yeah.
Something they care about.
Yeah, this is not a film. They don't have to be here.
Yeah.
They can move on to the other movie they'd like to be in.
And that also ties back to stuff we talked about the early chapters of the book, about the importance of communication between players and Dungeon Master, and establishing expectations up front. And there's sort of we talk about a little bit, a social contract of adventure design. The Dungeon Master has a responsibility to create a good reason for the characters to do the thing that the Dungeon Master has prepared. And the players, in turn, have a responsibility to respect the work that the DM has put into preparing and take the hook, assuming that it's reasonable. But sometimes, it just doesn't work. But the more you're communicating up front about the kinds of things the players want to do and the kind of campaign you want to play, then the more you can all be on the same page at the start of the campaign and make sure that you're going in a direction that everybody's enjoying.
And that goes into, you mentioned guide rails and railroads. Railroading is not very fun.
Nobody likes to feel like they have no options.
The whole point of D&D is that you can do anything.
Right.
Not that you have to be, again, stuck in someone else's movie.
Right. True. But we also say that there is, to sort of, for lack of a better metaphor, kind of an invisible railroad, a sort of sense of where you want the story to go.
Yeah.
And if the characters get wildly off track, it's a tool that the DM can use to kind of reorient and kind of get them back in the direction that the campaign needs to go in order to survive and be fun for everybody. And there are many tricks and tools that DMs can use, and these are talked about and elaborated upon in the guide to keep things moving in a direction that's fun for everybody, even if it's not the direction you originally intended.
And you also have guidelines for the adventure situational level, and I love this because 1 to 4 is you're the local heroes.
So in the 2014 Player's Handbook and Dungeon Master's Guide, we talk about sort of the tiers of play and the way that the scope of an adventure might change over time from your saving the village to your saving the world or the multiverse at the highest levels of play. And so we talk about that, and then we show you examples of what that might look like by giving four tables of adventure situations broken down by level. So you can see the kind of scope of adventures that we anticipate you're going to put level 1 to 4 characters in, versus the really sort of mind-blowing, a dragon is trying to become a god schemes that might be going on at the highest levels of play.
James, you have some dice here.
I do have some dice.
I love tables. This is why I like Wild Magic Sorcerer so much. Any chance to roll on a table.
So Todd, you're a DM. You want to run an adventure, a one-off adventure for characters in levels 1 to 4.
Let's do something higher.
Well, okay. Let's do 5 to 10 is a sweet spot.
5 to 10 is fun.
All right, so roll a d20.
15.
15. A ship carrying a valuable treasure or an evil artifact sinks in a storm or monster attack. That's fun, because that gets me thinking, okay, there's been a big storm. The characters show up at this coastal village, and the coastal village is sort of recovering from the storm, and the characters can help with the recovery. But then as they're helping out, strange behavior seems to be afflicting some of the coastal folk. And it's like, what is causing this? And when you ask around, it's like, well, this is new. It hasn't been this way since before the storm. So, and then the characters might do some, investigating and see that a little bit down the beach is some wreckage. And there might even be some footprints leading to and from that haven't been completely eroded away. And somebody's taken something out of a wreck and brought it into the town, and it is now perverting or converting local villagers into something other.
It also calls into question who was having this evil artifact shipped in the first place,
Where
and
was
when
it
will
going?
they come to the town?
Right, and that may be an expanded kind of idea where if you find the rest of the shipwreck or maybe a lost trunk, you'll find a missive or note or something to indicate who bought it and was transporting it to where, for what purpose, and that may inspire further adventures.
Actually, let's do 1 through 4. I'm curious.
Oh, okay, sure.
6.
A new sinkhole has revealed a long-buried dungeon, thought to hold treasure.
That's terrifying, too, what's underneath that you did not know.
Yeah.
Let's try levels 11 through 16. And so these are all tables for different levels.
6.
The ruler of the realm is sending an emissary to a hostile neighbor to negotiate a truce, and the emissary needs protection. That's a fun, different adventure, because not only do you have to get to your destination, you have to keep so-and-so alive.
Escort quest.
Yeah.
But less annoying, we hope.
And that can have a lot of friction for whatever, your alignment that you tend to be. Like, what if this is a very evil character, but your job is to keep this person alive? Or this is the only thing keeping the peace.
Yeah, or, this doesn't say anything about the role that the characters play in this adventure.
Yeah.
The hooks for the characters come separately. Maybe the characters are the ones that he needs protection from.
That's fair. But you have a bunch of these. And so even if you woke up, you have not prepared, you can roll randomly on this, and you have a very decent adventure hook that makes you kind of, again, these all make me daydream.
Yeah.
Well, we have to do a top level one.
Yeah.
Oh, true. The 17 to 20 level one.
5.
5 is a god of agriculture is angry, causing rivers to dry up and crops to wither. So what do the characters do to stop this situation?
Human sacrifice.
Wow.
Possible I pulled that one directly from Mythic Odysseys of Theros, actually.
Oh, cool.
It calls into question, what did everyone do to cause this god to become angry and lay waste?
Right. It could be a terrestrial thing where you have to address the issue on the ground by correcting whatever has offended the god, or it might be a multiversal issue where you have to travel to the god's home realm, maybe in the upper planes or somewhere else, and suddenly it's a planar adventure where you're searching Arborea for access to this divine being.
Which is amazing to go from you are in farmland and you're like, okay, we'll take care of this. We have to go talk to a god.
Right.
So going from a small town with some farmland, ending in,
my brain is going to infernal forces have traveled up the world tree into the god's domain in Arborea and wreaking havoc up there, and you find yourself in a full-on celestial war.
I go to right away like cult stuff where they've been making sacrifices to make sure the crops grow.
Right.
And circumventing the god in some way through
exactly. There might be some weird apocalyptic winter cult that's like pledged allegiance to the Prince of Frost, and so the land has become frozen, and the agriculture god needs to be appeased by dealing with the Prince of Frost. There's all kinds of ways to skin that for high-level characters.
And you go into, adventure maps, sample maps, map inspiration. And again, we've already talked about this, like bringing that location to life with NPCs and the adventuring inhabitants.
Yeah.
And maybe not all of them should be jerks. I think we've touched upon that.
Yeah. And once you have the premise of the adventure and you're starting to flesh out the details, then the important thing we talked about is having a hook for the players. What is going to make the characters or players care?
So we group those into three broad categories. One is the patron hooks, this idea that there's somebody who wants the characters to do this thing. And another one is supernatural hooks. Something magical happens. Maybe it's an omen from a god or a flight of birds doing strange behavior or whatever. And then the last one is just kind of happenstance. It might be you fall into that sinkhole that has just opened up.
That's the best way to start. You're just, let's go.
Welcome to the dungeon.
Yes, exactly.
That's sometimes my favorite adventure when it begins in the middle.
I think that was actually the hook to get the players into a very classic tournament adventure from the days of yore, the Hidden Shrine of Tama-chan, where you're in the jungle, you fall into a hole, guess what? You're in the dungeon.
And for all these hooks that you talk about, again, you have tables.
Yes.
So you provide the advice, but also if you need something really quick, like roll 1d6 for patrons.
2.
Someone the characters want to impress or need a favor from asks them to deal with the adventure situation. I'll help you if you help me.
Yep. So you go to a king and looking for a favor, and he says, fine, I'll help you, but first I need you to deal with this agricultural community where the crops have stopped growing because they're our breadbasket. You deal with that, figure out what's going on there, and you can have what you need.
But if you want a supernatural hook, you can roll a d6, and suddenly your hook becomes
5.
Animals or animated objects speak clearly to direct the adventurers toward the situation. So in the case of the agricultural brouhaha, it could be that the druids have sent out awakened animals across the land to draw adventurers to their plight.
I also like a tea kettle and all these objects, or maybe anthropomorphic, like carvings of animals and stuff, or whatever. Even the doorknobs are like telling you, hey, something's wrong, which is a sign. Like clearly something supernatural is very, very wrong.
Yeah, I think in Theros we had a story hook that had something to do with Karamatra, the goddess of agriculture. All of her statues have covered her face.
Yeah. Oh, that is amazing. Yeah, that is so creepy. When the statues change their posture.
Yeah.
When statues turn away from you, it's not a good feeling. I always like that fear, the creepiness of Doctor Who and the angels in that. It's spooky season and I'm me.
Yeah.
Happenstance hooks.
Sometimes adventure just falls into your lap.
3.
How? The adventure situation disrupts a festival or ceremony that the characters are attending.
This makes me think of Over the Garden Wall immediately when they go to Pottsville and everyone's wearing, I don't want to spoil this show, but you should have watched it by now. Everyone's got a pumpkin head on for some reason. And they're very keen on farming. And they go to this festival that seems pretty creepy and cultish, and then things unravel from there.
I'm thinking about the shipwreck plot that was one of the first ones we did, where like the village has a celebration to welcome a ship that comes every year bringing important supplies, and everybody's gathered for the celebration as the ship comes in, and then you see it go down.
And we've got planning encounters, make peace, protect an NPC or an object, retrieve an object, run a gauntlet, sneak in, stop a ritual, take out a single target. These are all great.
Yeah, the key thing here is just as you're putting encounters together to form an adventure, give some thought to what purpose each encounter is serving in moving the story of the adventure along. Sometimes that's as simple as keep these idiots from killing us so that we can get to the next thing, but sometimes there's more going on than that.
Not only are you giving playing advice for the adventure, making sure there's something for everyone. We have a section on multiple ways to progress because again, this is not a railroad. There are other ways to get to these locations or succeed. But you also have advice on adventuring NPCs that can help, especially if you need to flesh out the party a little bit, or you're running a one-on-one adventure even for someone. NPC advice, but then we really get into like social interacting.
Yeah.
Yeah.
NPCs can be a valuable tool for helping the DM kind of steer things along without having the NPC steal spotlight away from the characters.
Yeah.
But an NPC can almost, like one of the things we talk about in this book is, can serve as a voice of reason if the characters are sort of lost in their own, they don't really know what to do and they can't come to any agreement. An NPC who they like could simply say, well, maybe think about this, or did you remember that thing that happened last session? You know, the DM can basically, through the NPC's mouth, sort of help the players come to a natural and good conclusion about what to do next.
I feel like this might be the appropriate place to get into the weeds a little bit on the combat encounter math revision.
Yeah, you do have like a lot of different situations for combat encounters. We've got like changing elevation, defensive positions, hazards, mixed monster groups, reasons to move, and now there's some new math on this, right?
Yes. So the first thing you were talking about is various factors that might complicate a combat encounter and make it more interesting than just sort of forces lined up hitting each other until one of them gives up. But the second part is the system that we use to help you determine how challenging an encounter is going to be for a certain number of characters of a certain level. We made that math a lot simpler, but also more challenging. The first and important part of that is it's so much easier now to figure out how challenging an encounter is going to be. And the key detail is that the multiplier for the number of creatures involved in the encounter is gone. In 2014, we overestimated the importance of that.
Yeah, it's really super simple now. So the guidelines are, it's a 3-step process. Used to be more steps, now it's 3. First step is, you choose the difficulty of the encounter. You're the DM. How hard do you want this encounter to be? And the categories are low difficulty, which is, it's likely to have 1 or 2 scary moments for the players, but their characters should emerge victorious with no casualties. You can choose moderate difficulty, which I think most encounters probably fall in this category, is absent healing and other resources, an encounter of moderate difficulty could go badly for the adventurers. Weaker characters might get taken out of the fight, and there's a slim chance that 1 or more characters might die. Or you can go high difficulty, which is, this could be lethal for 1 or more characters, and to survive it, the characters are going to have to use smart tactics, quick thinking, and they probably need a little bit of luck as well. Once you've determined which of those 3 types of encounters, low, moderate, high, then you determine your XP budget, the number of experience points you have to spend on monsters to populate that encounter. And there is a single table that you look on, and you just cross-reference the party's level with the encounter difficulty, low, moderate, high. And that tells you how many experience points you have to spend on monsters. And then the step 3 is you go spend them. So every monster has an XP value. You know how many XP you have to spend. You just spend as much of that XP as you can without going over. So for instance, if you're a level 1
Yes.
party and you want a moderately difficult encounter, you have 75 XP to spend per
player. Perfect.
So if you're comparing this table to the one in the 2014 Dungeon Master's Guide, you'll notice that basically the leftmost column from 2014 is gone. That's what we used to call an easy encounter. That was too easy.
Yeah.
You will also, if you're looking very closely, notice that especially above level 10, the numbers are higher than they used to be. So by the time the 2025 Monster Manual is released, characters above level 10 are going to have their lives challenged more sort of from both directions, because monsters above that level are getting their numbers amped up a little bit, and I'm sure Chris and Jeremy will talk a lot more about that, and Wes, in the months ahead. But then also, the encounter building guidelines say you can have more of those tougher monsters in the encounter. So we're pretty confident that the characters are going to face appropriate and sometimes terrifying challenges at higher levels, as they should.
The whole section on building encounters is combat encounters is shorter. We've condensed a lot because we've reduced it down to a single table, and we've made it as simple as you have an XP budget, go spend it. I will say that there's always some corner case shenanigans to account for, like if you're running an encounter with 100 creatures.
Yeah.
So there's some troubleshooting advice that we also built into this Dungeon Master's Guide that really wasn't in the 2014 about just be mindful about running encounters with many, many creatures. Also be mindful of what a player's absence from a session might do to an encounter and how to adjust based on the change in the number of characters in the group. There's some notes here about CR0 creatures and about using them sparingly. And then there's also advice to the DM, just be mindful that if you've got encounters with a mixed group of creatures, every stat block that you have to add to the things you have to keep track of makes the encounter more complicated for you as a dungeon master. So if you've got 5 different kinds of creatures, you're looking at 5 different stat blocks during the encounter, and that can be a bit of a chore.
Yeah.
So try to keep that number down.
And then you have tables for, hostile, indifferent, friendly. We've got, advice on monster personalities, how that can make things more fun. Like you can roll and get cowardly or surrenders easily or greedy or disorderly, brave. They taunt enemies when they fight. Like you can give these monsters a little bit more flavor.
Yeah, it can be fun to sort of give the players some sense of what's going on in the monster community that they're barging into.
What is going on in the monster community right now?
Yes, monster communities can be just as textured as non-monster communities.
What is that dungeon HOA like?
Well, yeah, and it can create...
Your door is not up to code.
Your trap is not up to code. Way too many people have survived.
Yeah. You can create an encounter that's just 6 goblins in a room.
Yeah.
And those goblins are all hostile, and they're just going to attack you to the last.
Yeah.
But a more fun or textured encounter would be, okay, there are 6 goblins in the room. One of those goblins hates the guy in charge.
Yeah.
And will do everything possible to subvert that other goblin's leadership. And so suddenly, in this encounter, there's one goblin who might behave strangely, or might, as the battle is playing out, actually help the characters, because this goblin wants to see its rival fall. And suddenly, you have an encounter that the players are more likely to remember.
And it's a different way to solve that encounter. It doesn't have to be combat, because now you have, if someone's a good talker, they can start friction between these enemies, and they can fight themselves, which is always very satisfying. You rolled. What did you get?
I got a 5 on the monster relationships table.
Monster relationship. One monster cares only for itself and not the rest of the group.
So easy to manipulate.
Yeah.
And then you've got reactive tactics. Like you really cover kind of everything that you really, if you want to, like things that I don't always think about, but like you can react by ambush, fortify, hide and flee, investigate.
I think what these sections of this chapter on creating adventures really sort of drill down to is, again, going back to the idea of surprise, that you're crafting encounters where you're challenging expectations a little bit and challenging conventions. And so that players realize that no 2 encounters are just kind of exactly the same. This is particularly important, I think, in scenarios or adventures where you're meeting a lot of the same adversaries over and over again.
Right.
Like if you're invading a hobgoblin stronghold, it would be kind of a shame if all the hobgoblins felt exactly the same.
Yeah. I mean, this is about fleshing it out, making the world feel real.
Yeah.
That's why you were giving so much advice in so many different ways for also encounter pacing and tension, a variety of different threats, giving these monsters personalities, giving them different locations, giving them different things that they're actually actively doing against the players. That isn't just combat. They're all like you said, they're they're barricading, they're searching, maybe they're running away, but like not everything has to be a face-to-face battle. Something else can be happening. And then you've got random encounters here and also advice on how to bring the adventure to its end. You actually have also a table on top of that advice, adventure climax. So let's go and roll on that.
This is a D10 table.
6.
An ally betrays the adventurers as they're about to achieve their goal. Parentheses, use this climax carefully and don't overuse it. Why, James?
Curse your sudden but inevitable betrayal.
Yeah, if you pull the rug out from under the players too often, they will become jaded and miserable, and they will not trust any of their allies going forward.
Right. You know, the characters have found their way into the agricultural god's domain on Arborea and found this diabolical invasion and are starting to drive the devils back, and then the party warlock, because it's always the warlock.
No, what?
That was just for you, Todd.
Thank you.
Somebody decides they have to side with the devils.
And then again, you have the advice on individual treasure.
Yeah, how you dispense treasure over an adventure, basically.
And then again, adventure examples.
5 to be exact.
And encounter examples.
Yep.
We've got like the
That's 5 more than the last DMG had.
Is there anything? No, I think that's basically it.
That is the adventure chapter.
That is a very thorough chapter, and as it should be, because this entire game is about adventuring.
Yep, adventures are kind of the core of the fun around which D&D campaigns thrive.
Thank you so much for watching. Every week leading up to the brand new 2024 Dungeon Master's Guide, we'll have new videos and premieres telling you more about the book. To pre-order the 2024 Core Rulebooks digital physical bundle, click on the links in this video description and find out more about all the pre-order bonuses, including frames, backdrops, dice sets, digital dragon art book, and the digital golden dragon mini. I'm Todd Kenrick. Thank you so much for watching. Don't forget to hit the like, the subscribe button, and also the notification button so that you're alerted when we have brand new videos about the future of D&D.